countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for that last comic shop place.
That's right. We're opening it up, and we're going to rearrange everything so that when you walk into the shop, it's still a comic book shop, but it looks a little bit different.
That's right. It's very similar. It's the same cast of characters, but sometimes the ages are different, or somebody might have a mustache when they didn't have a mustache, or they might yell things about France and AIDS.
Yeah.
That's what the Ultimate's for. It's to bring people in that the oldies and the moldies can appreciate and be like, yeah, look, it's Gwen Stacy, but now she's a goth teen.
Chad knows his stuff, yeah.
See, we all know our stuff here at the Last Comic Shop. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith, as well as somebody that truly does know quite a lot about Ultimates. We wanted him to be on this week's show, given the fact that we're talking about lots of Ultimates. That's right. Ultimate Invasion, which recently came out, into Ultimate Universe, which was only one issue. I don't know why they just didn't make it issue 5 of Ultimate Invasion, but whatever. George from Shortbox Summary knows quite a lot about all the Ultimate stuff, so we're glad to have you on the show this week, George.
Glad to be here, guys. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Always happy to be on it.
George, would you say that you read everything that came out of the original Ultimates universe, like whole hog on that?
I would say, like, if not whole hog, then at least 3/4 hog. I have a theory that, like, half of the Ultimate books back in the day in the 2000s, half of them were like, let's do a cover song, like, let's modernize what was there and make it more palatable. And then the other half of the books were like, let's do something completely hog wild different. And I really gravitated towards the Hog Wild Different books. And I'm going to say that's like the Mark Millar stuff. I'm going to say that's like the Brian K. Vaughan and Ultimate X-Men stuff. And a lot of the Bendis stuff played it kind of straight. I was treating Ultimate Spider-Man kind of like the way a lot of people treat manga, where I was just grabbing the trades. But for Ultimates 2, Ultimate Fantastic Four, even to an extent, I was picking up those single issues because I couldn't wait to see what they were turning what I knew on its head.
That was my impression of the Ultimate Universe, too, was that it was by design built for the trade, which wasn't always the case in comics. And, like, now you have these things that are flowing in, 5 or 6 issue arcs. And, oh, my goodness, Bendis, as great as he was, you had that decompressed storytelling where Spider-Man doesn't get his costume until 5 issues in. And then you get things like the Ultimates you were talking about, and that basically laid the groundwork for the MCU.
Going along with our Ultimate talk, as you may or may not know, when we have George on the show, he does pull from other parts of, pop culture that were going on at the same time as some of the comic books that we're talking about. Now, this Ultimate Invasion book that we're talking about today, it came out last year, and we kind of sort of covered some of that already on that Fantastic Four show, so we decided to ask George to go way back to the original Ultimate Universe, right? Back when it was in the 2000s. So he has cherry-picked a couple of years out of that run to give us some movies, right, George?
You sure did. So what I did, because this book is really special when we're talking about Ultimate Invasion. Ultimate Invasion is the three-peat, I think, for Ultimates. So after talking with you, after talking with Chad, after talking with Jay, I did my homework. I did my due diligence, and I got 3 different eras to talk about with you. So I want to go back to September 8th, 2000. So I think this is the first weekend box office after Ultimate Spider-Man #1. #1 movie, bringing in a cool $2.8 million, is The Watcher.
What?
The Watcher, starring James Spader, Marissa Tomei, and Keanu Reeves. Not that Watcher, different Watcher.
Okay.
Wow, that is a slice of pure late 90s, early 2000s casting.
I pride myself on being a huge movie nerd. I had no freaking clue what this movie was. So I had to look up on IMDb. So I got the summary for this. A detective tracking a serial killer gives up all hope of solving the crimes and moves to another city. The serial killer has resurrected and resumes sending him pictures of his next victim. Okay, so that was
Can I go out on a limb that James Spader is the serial killer?
Feels like a safe bet. I mean, as much as I love Stargate, I assume he's probably the bad guy because he's got great bad guy energy.
I want to go back to those sentences. Does he resurrect his victims and then kill them again, or the serial killer was resurrected?
It doesn't make the most amount of sense. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to skip to movie number 2. Raking in a cool $2.1 million. We got Nurse Betty, starring Renee Zellweger, Morgan Freeman, Chris Rock, and Greg Kinnear.
I remember that.
Number 3, with a 1.9 million box office total for September 8, 2000. Bring It On, the cheerleading movie with Kirsten Dunst,
Oh, yes.
Gabrielle Union.
Yeah, I watched that movie for all the wrong reasons. How about
I was 10 years old, so I watched that movie for the same wrong reasons, but they felt so right when I was 10 years old.
I was going to say, it's not a bad movie. I've watched it for the right reasons, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. That Kirsten
No,
Dunst
it's a solid sports movie. It is a solid sports movie. Number 4, Space Cowboys. This is like the older dudes.
The old guys go and save the satellite thing
Yeah.
with Clint Eastwood.
It's not a terrible movie. Clint Eastwood, James Gardner, I think's in that.
Yeah,
Tommy Lee
yeah.
Jones.
It worked for Armageddon. Let's bring out the senior citizens and try it again.
For sure, yeah. And number 5 at the box office, What Lies Beneath. This was the Michelle Pfeiffer, Harrison Ford movie.
Yes, Harrison Ford.
Wow.
And
Michelle
Robert
Pfeiffer looking good.
Zemeckis directed this because he had to take time off from the filming the first half of Castaway, and then he had to wait for Tom Hanks to get into the right shape for the second half of Castaway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy because I remember seeing What Lies Beneath like in August.
This is back when movies used to have like a long pull
Longer
in the
run.
box office. They have much
Yeah.
longer runs. And like these numbers are just from that day.
And listen,
And-
these are all the movies that people lament not having anymore.
What Lies Beneath, like a nice sexy romantic thriller, like that'd be great. Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I looked up The Watcher. James Spader is the good guy.
Oh.
Keanu Reeves plays the bad guy.
No. How can he
Oh
be
my
the
God.
bad guy when he won't touch any ladies with his hands?
Only a year after The Matrix, he's already playing the heavy in a movie. Who saw that coming?
He didn't even
Yeah,
have
he's
top
theater
billing. He had
as Logan.
third billing on that. Yeah.
Do you guys have your walking shoes on? Because we're gonna take a huge leap forward.
Okay.
We're gonna jump to November 6th, 2013. This is the first Friday after Cataclysm: Ultimate's Last Stand comes out. This
Now,
is
let's hit the pause button. The
Please.
Cataclysm we need to explain. The Ultimate Universe originally designed to give folks a continuity-free restart where they could jump in with these characters to
And not feel burdened with needing to know 50, 60 years of lore.
right. A mere decade later, George, what happened?
a mere decade later. People were burdened with 13 years worth of continuity. So,
And they decided to blow it up.
sure did.
This was after Ultimatum, where they tried to sink it with a tidal wave.
George, what movies were coming out at that time that Cataclysm dropped?
number 1 at the box office, Thor: The Dark World. We are finally in full swing of the MCU. It took a tenth of a century, but we got there. And that pulled in a cool $31.89 million. Number 2, Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. Number 3 at the box office, Las Vegas, starring Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Kline, and Mary Steenburgen.
No, never heard of it.
Now, this is directed by John Turteltaub, who I think is probably best known for Cool Runnings. I think that's
That was a long time before this, right?
Yes,
Cool Runnings
that was
mid-90s.
That was
Yeah,
20
John
years
Candy
before
was
this.
still alive.
And then number 4 at the box office, Ender's Game, the adaptation.
Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Number 5 at the box office, Freebirds, which is an animated movie with Owen Wilson, Woody Harrelson, and Amy Poehler playing a bunch of turkeys. And the summary on IMDb, a pair of turkeys discover a time machine and decide to use it to travel to the first Thanksgiving to take turkeys off the menu forever.
Wow.
Right.
You know what?
And remove them from Streets of Rage.
It is a garbage chicken, not a garbage turkey. Will you guys knock it off?
That's the big debate behind the scenes this week. I got my Streets of Rage action figure. And on the back, they have the picture. When you punch the garbage cans, chicken or turkey?
Come on, it's a rotisserie chicken. It's a small thing. It is not going to feed a family of 16 at your Thanksgiving dinner.
Don't put those little turkey leg caps on chicken.
Oh, they just wanted it to be
Turkey.
fancy. Now knock it off. I will say this. I think I would rather watch that Freebirds movie than that Las Vegas movie. Any day of the week. That Las Vegas movie seems like something that you would get on an airplane and then immediately turn it off because you did.
Look, I don't want to pretend there isn't an amount of wine in the world that it would take for me to watch Las Vegas, because I know there is, and I don't think it's as much as you would assume it to be.
On Rotten Tomatoes, Las Vegas is 46%.
I've seen worse. I've done more for less. I got to be honest, guys. Yeah. That brings us to June 23rd, 2 days after the first issue of Ultimate Invasion came out in June of 2023. So this is the first Friday after that issue release. Number 1 at the box office, No Hard Feelings, the Jennifer Lawrence raunchy R-rated comedy.
Oh, I like
I
that.
still haven't seen that.
Yes.
I like that movie too. I was a pretty big fan. Number 2 at the box office, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
I love that.
Solid movie.
5.7 million. Number 3, a movie that everyone was claiming was going to destroy Disney, but ended up saving them just because it did have like a long tail at the theaters. Elemental.
It's not bad.
Right? Animated movie about fire and water getting together.
Water.
And
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
make
great
it seem-
visuals, stories, the same Pixar story they've done for the last 5 Pixar movies, but that's a good
Yeah.
story.
Number 4, I got to be honest with you guys. I'm a huge comic book nerd. I haven't seen this movie yet. The Flash.
Not a big loss. Not a big loss, George.
Oh, come on. You didn't mind it. You were getting a little Jonesy with the whole Michael Keaton and the bat, and he takes his.
I was just hoping that Michelle Pfeiffer was going to show up.
I will defend that movie slightly, and that I am traditionally not a big DC movie fan, but I enjoyed that one. I had to put a lot of things in the box, things around the movie that were a little bit unsavory, but just sitting in the theater, like, I had fun watching Ezra Miller turn to the side in his bat costume and realize that it doesn't turn that way. I had fun watching Michael Keaton. It was fun. Come on.
I can honestly say it was the best of the Snyderverse movies. That's not saying much, but I can say it's the
But
best.
you can
of the
say it.
Spider-Man.
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, you think it's better than the first Wonder Woman movie?
Well, it only had that Wonder Woman sound playing at least once.
Wait, you don't like the metal? No?
George, there are few things I hate more in this world than that stupid sound. Wonder Woman.
And then number 5, my favorite movie of this bunch. Not the best movie. I think Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the best movie, but my favorite movie of this bunch. I am a huge Wes Anderson nerd, so Asteroid City rounds out our number 5 for June 23rd, 2023.
I made Chad watch that.
Yeah.
After it was out in the theaters, when we watched it home, and he had a grandpa nodding off. I gotta say it was like 2 a.m. But still, I looked over at him 45 minutes in, and he had his head down on his chest, and
It plays a little slower. It's no Royal Tenenbaums, but it was
Wait,
fun.
you two are watching this movie at 2 a.m.?
yes.
Man, you guys are wicked hardcore. I wouldn't watch this movie at 2 a.m. It's like watching Ambien. Why would you do that?
Yeah, no, I subsequently went back and watched the rest of it. It was solid. But yeah, nothing beats Gene Hackman teaching his grandsons how to throw dice.
Okay, Jay, is Wes Anderson a household name, yes or no?
No.
I don't think he's a household name, despite making some of the most incredible movies of the last 20 years. Like, there's a difference between being good at your job and being a household name. And I don't think it crosses one to the other.
Let me ask you a follow-up there. Do you think he's more well-known than, say, Kevin Smith?
Now, yes.
Do you think Kevin Smith is a household name?
No.
Kevin Smith is a household name among comic book nerds, but among the laymen's, no. Yeah, it's actually hard.
I mean, if you look at other directors in the same generation as Wes Anderson, and we're talking like the Tarantinos, that is a household name.
And we're talking about esoteric indie directors.
He's an esoteric indie director, right? Quentin Tarantino, he's done as many films as Wes Anderson, yet his films, I mean, he's a household name.
The issue with me and this whole household name discussion is I honestly don't think there are a lot of directors that have reached that level probably in the last 20 years. Tarantino is one of them that I can think of. Maybe Christopher Nolan nowadays. I think people know who Christopher Nolan is. But you're talking about the people like Spielberg's and Scorsese's, and I don't think there are people out there among directors that are like, oh yeah.
That was my argument. Barbie made $1.5 billion last year. I don't think Greta Gerwig is a household name because I think the brand of Barbie is bigger than Greta Gerwig making that movie successful.
Yeah.
And I think that movie is only successful because Greta Gerwig was involved with it. That said, people don't know who Greta Gerwig is. And so I think if she's not a household name, all due respect to Wes Anderson, who's made so many movies I've enjoyed, that dude's not a household name either.
Well, one thing that we're hoping is a household name is Ultimate Invasion, at least among the comic book fans that have tuned in for this week's show. So thanks so much to George from Shortbox Summary for that awesome movie thing, but it's time to get to comics. We'll be right back with our review of Ultimate Invasion plus Ultimate Universe. Stay tuned.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at bcwsupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
When 6 teenagers are caught in a devastating storm, they wake up the next day with unimaginable abilities. Now the same storm that gave them their powers has awoken an ancient evil set on destroying their home and the world at large. And it's up to them to stop it. In a world without heroes, they're here to kick some ass. Read Born a Storm, a new ongoing series for free at Born a Storm Comic on Instagram. Hashtag Born a Storm.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our Read Pile Review. Yes, where we take a comic book that I was really, really interested in reading. And then I said, hey, Chad, that should be your pick this week, shouldn't it? And you were like, yeah, I actually want to read that. And I was like, there you go. Great job, Chad, picking a book that I wanted to read. And the major reason I want to read it is because, boy, oh boy, do I love Jonathan Hickman rating Reed Richards. Doesn't matter if it's a bad Reed Richards, good Reed Richards, thousands of Reed Richards. Anytime Jonathan Hickman writes Reed Richards, he nails what that character is all about more than any other writer that I've ever seen in this comic. So, in any case, we've got Ultimate Invasion followed by one issue of Ultimate Universe. Chad, who worked on these 5 issues?
Ultimate Invasion, which ran cover dated from August through November 2023, was written by Jonathan Hickman. Pencils by Bryan Hitch. Andrew Curie was the inker, and Alex Sinclair on colors with VC's Joe Caramagna handling the lettering duty. And then that's followed by Ultimate Universe #1, which was really Ultimate Invasion #5, written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Stefano Caselli and letters by Joe Caramagna.
Yeah. Chad, you bring up a great point, which is the fact that they retitled this Ultimate Universe, but it should have really been the 5th issue because it was a direct continuation of the storyline that starts in the first 4 issues. J.A., give us a 10-cent synopsis for what happens in those 4 issues, and then this 5th issue, which then they called something else, which was real stupid.
Well, it starts out with the maker, who is the Ultimate Universe's Reed Richards, locked up in the 616, and then through his own machinations, and I don't know, I guess they allowed him to have internet access at some point, so he's sending emails, and a SWAT team enters to break him out, and he turns them into him through some horrible genetic stuff and escapes. He then spends time on the 616 collecting a bunch of different MacGuffins from all the different superhero groups so that he has a way to build a portal out of the 616, steals all of Reed Richards' files so he has all the knowledge of the 616, and then goes to another universe, which is the 6160, where he has knowledge of everything that happens within the 616. So he goes about stopping things from happening, like stopping Spider-Man from becoming Spider-Man by capturing the spider, or turning Loki into the king of Asgard so that Thor gets imprisoned. And he's doing all these machinations to essentially run Earth the way he wants it run. And Howard Stark and Obadiah Stane have a company in what is sort of the North America zone. And they're sort of running that zone. And then there's this Russian zone with Colossus and Magic and Omega Red for some reason. The Japanese zone with Silver Samurai and Sunspot and Viper. And so sort of the world has been broken up into these different areas. And they every so often, to keep the proletariat in check, one of these big nation groups is going to be the bad people, and everyone else will fight against them for a while, and then somebody else rises up. I mean, it's sort of this big giant chess thing, and ultimately, Howard Stark didn't know this was going on. He kind of turned a blind eye to it, and he starts to not agree with it. The Reed Richards is there, the 6160 Reed Richards, still smart, but no stretchy powers. And it's sort of setting up a whole new universe where they're trying to stop the Maker from destroying things as they were meant to be, as Hickman is wont to do, laying big ideas to allow other people to build off of.
Yeah, it's curious how, like, the original Ultimate Universe was all about, like, hey, you don't need to know anything about anything in the Marvel Universe in order to read this. And now this new Ultimate Universe is like, hold on. You need to know the origin stories of all the big players. You're going to take their origin stories away, and the whole story arc is how do we restore those folks back to their proper positions. I wanted to ask whether or not you were excited about Magic. They throw her in. I was just like, ooh.
Yeah, and she's there for like 2 panels. She does nothing.
And what about Buddhist monk Hulk?
This is the problem. They were there because we know them as characters, but they didn't actually do anything. What did you think about making it's the 6160 Reed Richards into Dr. Doom?
I like that, actually. I mean, I read it right that the Maker made him put on that mask. Needling him. Yes. He's like, oh, here, yeah.
But he's needling him that it's an in-joke that he doesn't understand. Only the Maker understands. He even says that. I don't know why he made me wear this mask. I don't get it.
Yeah. And I liked how he looked like Doom 2099 because he had like the blue Doom cape and everything.
What pissed the Maker off? Why is he such a bad guy?
Cataclysm that did it?
There was Ultimatum where he lost everything, and then he took it really personally, and then really it was the first issue of Ultimate Comics Ultimates where he went and he made like the Impossible City type deal where it was like time was moving faster there, so he hyper evolved and then brought the world to its knees. And that was like the John Hickman, Assad Ribic Ultimates run that unfortunately was cut down at like 10 issues, and it was really special, and then all of a sudden it was just like another Ultimates book.
Wow.
So who had their space helmet first, the Maker or Professor X?
No, the Maker had it first to the point where when I was seeing like the House of X, Powers of X stuff, I thought it was the Maker first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was getting confused in this book. There's one point when Professor X shows up and you see him from the back, and I'm like, why is the Maker twice in this panel? Like, why is he down there, and why am I seeing him up here with the rest of I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And I was just like, oh no, that's Professor X. Mm-hmm. It's still a thing. All right. Well,
beautiful.
The reason why I wanted to read this particular book, and I was super excited because honestly I felt this was kind of like the true sequel to Secret Wars in 2015, right? Secret Wars in 2015 is one of my favorite comic book events of all time. It's one of my favorite crossovers of all time. I thought it was a magnum opus for Jonathan Hickman. And some of those ideas that were kind of floated around in Secret Wars with the multi-universes, with a bad Reed Richards in the Maker. He's like a foreign invader. He doesn't have his universe anymore. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go to somebody else's universe and make it my own. Do everything that I want to do, set it up the way that I want to do, run it the way that I want to run it. And he's such an engaging character in this.
I have 2 questions for you. One, this is supposed to be like the reintroduction of the Ultimate Universe to mainstream Marvel, right? Do you guys think that this was like an effective issue 1 to introduce a new universe? Because I personally do not. I think the first Ultimate Universe, the beauty in it is that you could start literally from ground zero. Like, you had no expectation of understanding of anything. The book meant more if you knew like the general history of the Marvel Universe, but it didn't beg you to know the general history of the Marvel Universe, right? This book feels one step beyond postmodernism, right? Like, this feels like you need to be familiar with the original history. You need to be familiar with the defunct history of the thing that was in direct defiance of the original history. And now you need to know this history. Like, I think this is one of the worst books you could possibly pick up if you had to like be introduced to a new universe.
Well, I want to answer your first question because I didn't read any of the original Ultimate Universe. I didn't read Secret Wars. I didn't read any of this stuff, so I was coming in blind. I had to do some serious deep diving on Wikipedia just to know who some of these characters were and what the whole point was. I'd never heard of the Maker before, and that's why I asked the question about the character design, because I'm like, okay, he looks exactly like freaking Professor X from the Krakoan Age.
And what's the expression that Hickman pulls on? Yeah. Good artist borrow, great artist steal. He just stole from his own ideas.
My follow-up question, do you guys think realistically for the last 12 years, you could skip a majority of Marvel books and just read Hickman books and understand the general oeuvre of the Marvel Universe, right? Like, if you just do like Hickman Fantastic Four into Hickman Avengers, into Secret Wars, into the beginning of the Krakoa Age, into this, do you think you could follow the general gist of the Marvel Universe and be satisfied? In terms of not like quality, not style, but just in terms of like having an editorial direction and planting a flag in the ground. I think Hickman is the second most important writer to spend time at Marvel in the last 25 years.
I feel that you can do that with Hickman books if you want to do that with Hickman books. It's one of those things where you don't have to. Obviously, there's tons of other Marvel books out there, tons of other people that are throwing out ideas. I mean, Jason Aaron had his huge, like, War of the Realms and all this other stuff that was going on. Avengers are making a base in the Celestial's head up at the. All of that is kind of like on a separate platform or separate thing. You know what I mean? If you are genuinely one of these people that just like I like Hickman writing, I'm only going to read Hickman books, then you can pick up the Hickman books and they follow a general storyline. And he pulls more stuff from, like, again, things that happened 20, 30 years ago. And you're like, oh, okay, great. I understand, like, the general gist of, like, how people became the superheroes they are and some of the big moments. And that's all he pulls from. Everything else, he's just like, it didn't even happen. I mean, come on. Like, Reed Richards in this book doesn't even have a beard. And, like, everybody's drawing Reed Richards with a beard nowadays. And he's not going to have a beard in this. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what Jason Aaron does or this person does. He's like, I'm writing my story beginning to end. You can read it if you want to. And I like it.
Yeah, I'm the opposite because I hate it. And George, I don't think you're wrong. I absolutely agree with your point. Hickman and to a lesser extent Al Ewing, these guys are your universe builders and maintenance crew. You know, they've got their overall themes that they are imparting and trying to build on. And Hickman's got his charts and his circles. And like
yeah.
When I read a Jonathan Hickman story, I'm entertained and I like it. But for me, it's always the Jonathan Hickman story. And it makes my heart a little sad that that is the Marvel story currently for the last decade or so. Because I do think his stories, he's like AI. There's a certain heartlessness to it where it's occurring and it's complicated and it's fascinating and it is impressive in scope and what it can do. But at the end of the day, I always feel like the heart of the characters is wrong. I think Everything Dies is wrong. I think Secret Wars was wrong. Yeah. I think what's happening with the X-Men has been wrong for so long, thanks to Hickman. I think the Ultimate Universe, this is the exact opposite of the intention of the Ultimate Universe in my mind. But do I think it's well done? Absolutely.
I think the issue I have with Hickman is he's a bit like J.J. Abrams, and he loves his puzzle box storytelling. And at the end of the day, sometimes it pulls off, and other times you're just left with more puzzle boxes that go nowhere. And what was the point of all that? And I think that they dealt with that with the Krakoan Age after he left the X-Men stuff. And he was like, okay, now we've got all this stuff that's been built up, all these puzzle boxes that haven't been opened yet, but he's gone. What are we going to do with all this? And some of them had to get necessarily thrown to the curb, and the other ones they sort of worked out on. So I think it just comes down to is if you like his writing or you don't. And I guess we have Andrew who loves it and Chad who hates it.
I feel like Jonathan Hickman writes for one of the two camps that we always talk about that currently exist in comics. There's one camp, which are the people that are coming in new. So whether they're kids, whether they're people that see the movies and now want to pick up comic books, there's that camp. And then there's the other camp, which is like, we've been around for 20, 30, 40 years, some of them 50 years reading comic books, especially Marvel comic books, and we want to continue our continuity in our stories. I think Jonathan Hickman writes to a T for those folks. He writes for that camp. He writes for the folks that wanted to see Peter Parker aged up, get kids and get married because all of those folks got kids and got married and grew up. He doesn't really write for the folks that are new. I think Bendis really does write things for folks that are just coming into the tent and don't know a lot of stuff and are like, yeah, I don't know a lot of stuff, so give me the heart of the character and just let me go. So I just feel like that's, if you were a person that's a continuity wonk, a Mark Grunwald type of person where you're like, oh, let me go through my Marvel Universe A to Z guide and find all my characters, then you're going to love it. And that's why I love it.
I think it's interesting that, like, without even thinking about it, I was like, oh, if you want to read two writers to catch you up on Marvel this century, the first is Bendis and the second is Hickman. Because, Andy, you're absolutely right that Bendis is the kind of guy to give you the bare minimum introduction to the characters. The guy boils everything down to like the simplest possible explanation of these characters. And then Hickman just puts them through the ringer, right? Like Hickman is the kind of writer to like make them their most complex. And so the fact that like those are the two writers that in my eyes define this century so far for Marvel, I think it's fascinating that like the first half was like the most simplest explanation of these characters, and the second half is the most complex explanation of these characters. Whereas Secret Wars, you see them when the universe is ending, and then now we're getting a new beginning. But like Andy, you're right. This is Secret Wars 2, right? Like this is the sequel to it. And so this is a reward for people who have been there and who have stuck it out. This is not a beginning for new fans. I wish it were. And that's my biggest problem with this book, is that it is a reward for people who know what they're getting into. It is not a new beginning for people hoping to find something. I loved it. This was the perfect book for me. The fact that Bryan Hitch was the artist, chef's kiss, mwah, absolute beautiful, because he was the artist on the original Ultimates, which I think is the defining book of the Ultimate era. All due respect to dead Peter Parker. Like everything about this book sings, and the fact that you called it a sequel to Secret Wars is absolutely perfect, because it clearly is. I'm so torn. We're going to go to a break. Can we talk about the current stable of Ultimate books that are coming out?
Oh, absolutely.
After the break. Okay.
Yeah, let's get to that break. We'll be back with more of The Last Comic Shop with ratings, recommendations. Maybe some of them will be some of these awesome new Ultimate books that are out on the market today. So stay tuned for that.
Bonjour. This is Geeky Old Hog, and I've got a nice little YouTube channel where I review the latest comics and occasionally bang on about the old ones. Why should you bother? I hear you cry. Well, I'm a published writer of comics. I had 6 shops back in the day, and I've been a collector for 50 years. Yeah, that's why there's an O and an L in the middle of Geeky and Hog. I'm clever like that. So, if you fancy it, reviewing the new ones weekly and then looking at artists and stuff, on the side, as the actress said to the bishop, everyone is welcome. Geeky Old Hog, all one word, over on YouTube.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all these games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our ratings, where you don't have to give Molecule Man a cheeseburger in order to continue with the Ultimate Universe discussions. Yeah, see, that's a Hickman reference. That's you have to know some things, to know some things. Why Miles is like, he's like, I'm cool, man. I'll stay here because this is where all my stuff is. I'm fine now. I like that scene where he told Maker to go fly a kite. It was good.
Right, because he's like, I'm going to stay in the 616 because I make more money in the 616. It's not show friends, it's show business.
Your side projects, please. I'm in the big times now, big leagues. I ain't going back down to the minors. Forget that. Any case, we got 1 out of 4 scale from J.A. Scott. What is that 1 out of 4 scale, J.A.?
It's 1 out of 4 Marvel Earth universe numbered thingies.
That's nice. No, I like that. It was a terrible sound effect, but whatever. We're going to start off with George. So he's our guest. So George, what are you giving these 4 issues plus the one that should have been issue 5?
I'm going to give it 2 if you've never read an Ultimate book before. If this is like your first introduction, thinking like, oh, the Ultimate Universe is just starting, this is the intro to it. This book is a 2. If you've been around, if you're familiar with the rumblings, I think this book is like a 3.5, 3.75 out of 4. Like, I think this book is the perfect get you excited about something new, but isn't something new. So if you're brand new to the idea of a comic book universe being introduced right before your very eyes, this book sucks. If you're familiar with the current stable and current continuity of Marvel Comics, this book is a home run. This book is incredible.
All right, George, but much like the Maker, I keep my charts. I've got my facts and figures and circle graphs. I need a number, sir. What's your final number?
275. 275 out of 4.
275. See, I'm not going to be swayed. This book is for me, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat my grade by saying, if you're people that aren't me, you may not like this. What did I think? I loved it, honestly. Again, give me more Secret Wars 2015. That was, again, the best crossover ever. Ever. I just loved it. Everything lives. It's just great. And this was the sequel to it. And although some of the issues in the middle part, like issue 2, 3, whatever, by issue 5, boy, I was like on board. I was like, yeah, go save Thor. Go zoom around, get blasted, get stabbed. I'm loving this. Where are they going to go next? I'm excited. And as Chad told me before, like, it does add so much more to Ultimate Spider-Man, right? Like, the new Ultimate Spider-Man run that's going on right now, really, if you really like that, you should go back and read Ultimate Invasion and this Ultimate Universe, because you get so much more out of it. Like, then you're just like, yeah, you realize why May Parker's dead. I didn't care why May Parker was dead before, but now I know. And I'm like, all right. But so I'm going to give it a 4. Yeah, that's a 4. I love this book. Man, I'm totally on board. This is classic Hickman. Eat it up with a spoon.
True.
Yeah, I'm more on George's wavelength on this, and I hadn't read it before. I hadn't read any of the Ultimate Universe before, and I was excited because, I'm going to get into something new, and it's going to be fresh. And it wasn't new and fresh. I had to deep dive into so much lore to understand what the heck was going on. If I would give this to my son who has no history in the Marvel Universe, I don't think he would enjoy it because he doesn't know who the Maker is. And he hardly knows the Fantastic Four. And he definitely doesn't know that. And, that's Iron Man, but it's not Iron Man because it's not Tony Stark. It's Howard Stark. And it's taking everything that the Ultimate Universe was supposed to do and flipping it on its head and saying, no, actually, you need to know all of the 616, and you need to know all of the previous Ultimate Universe stuff, and then you'll find it enjoyable as we remake it. And I had asked this question on the break, what was the Ultimate Universe Earth like? Because this Earth that has been remade is not Earth as we know it. It's like a risk board Earth, where there are different countries. There's somebody in Kamchatka, and you know, you've got other people in the South Americas.
It's very Orwellian. It's like, again, the zones and I get it.
So it was harder for me to get into than I anticipated, and it wasn't because of that. It wasn't as enjoyable as it could have been. I had to focus on doing so much research just to understand the story that I couldn't enjoy just the storytelling aspect of it. But I digress. 2.5.
All right, Chad. What did you say?
Okay. What's the thing about the two wolves inside of you? I have two wolves. One loves to buy comic books, and one loves to read comic books, right? And so
yeah,
I had picked up the Ultimate Invasion just because I'm a big Miles Morales fan. I loved the Bendis Spider-Man story, even though there were parts that I wasn't crazy about. And I infamously, back in the early 2000s, Bendis was writing his story, and he showed up at Pittsburgh Comic-Con, and I yelled at him for about 25 minutes because I didn't like his Green Goblin. I'm like, the Green Goblin shouldn't grunt things, Bendis. But he was very gracious, very generous. Anyway, I bought the Ultimate Invasion miniseries just because I wanted to see where Miles' story was going to go, right? And so I got the version with Miles on the cover for issue number 1, and he's in there for a couple of pages, and then he goes away, which was weird to me because that's what I associate with the Ultimate Universe is Miles and Spider-Man and that kind of stuff. But I bought the rest of the series because there's that wolf that buys those things. And then I read it, and I'm like, well, I don't give a shit about this. The story by itself isn't something that I care about. I'm not a can guy. I don't care about the maker's plan. I had nothing really to latch onto. But then I'm a Spider-Man guy. So I read Ultimate Universe Spider-Man, which, if it's not somebody's recommendation, it should be. Where in this universe, May is gone, but Uncle Ben is not. And not only is Uncle Ben not gone, Uncle Ben pals with J. Jonah Jameson, and it's the best freaking thing ever! And so, after reading through Ultimate Spider-Man, I was like, all right, I'll give Ultimate Invasion a shot again. And now that I had a hook, and I was like, okay, I care about this a little bit, it changed the Ultimate Invasion storyline, where I was like, oh, this is compelling. All right, I get it. And like, it made me enjoy the story. But it wasn't until I had that hook, and Jonathan Hickman does not give you that hook early on. And as we said way back when, you can check our archives when we got into Hawks and Pox. Jonathan Hickman stories, there's a 6-year run until the payoff. I always reserve my right to change my opinion on things because sometimes 2 years in, he decides he's done writing the X-Men books and he's going to go off and do something else. With Hickman stories, like I said, he's a different kind of writer. And if you're just following the Jonathan Hickman universe, that can be a satisfactory thing by itself. I think his work, if you follow the Fantastic Four into New Avengers, into Infinity, into Secret Wars, that is an awesome storyline, right? It's an incredible accomplishment. If you just read New Avengers, it sucked. You got Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw and nothing else.
They put him in movies. What are you talking about?
You got a big, incomprehensible pile of goo. You know, if you're reading the X-Men books and he leaves halfway, I don't know. Yeah, so I'm always torn because, like I said, there are Hickman things he does that I really enjoy. But, like, the Hickman universe off unto itself, it's its own thing. And I don't know where I am with that. But, like I said, once I had my hook, I was able to enjoy this. So we're going to say 3. Yeah, it's the base 3. With the asterisk that I reserve the right to say that it was terrible if it ends badly in 6 months, which, like, a lot of Ultimate Universe reboots have.
Fuck. Yeah, all right, yeah.
Well, let's get into recommendations because we do have some other Ultimate Universe books that are going on right now. Some folks have those as our recommendations. Make sure that you're picking up not only Ultimate Invasion as well as Ultimate Universe #1, so you can finish off that story, and any of these other Ultimate Universe books that are hitting the market, as well as other recommendations. We're going to start off with J.A., though, because his is. What do you got for us, J.A.?
I am recommending Ultimate X-Men. Yeah, I'm an X-Men guy, but it's not an X-Men book as you would think. And this is where I think the Ultimate Universe works really well. this is set in this new Risk type universe where Japan and the Asian countries are all sort of one giant territorial block, and it focuses on armor, Hazako Ichiki, and it's not focusing on your Wolverine or your Jean Grey or your Iceman or your Beast or some of the, the top tier X-Men that everyone knows about. It's focusing on a much smaller, lesser tier, second tier, third tier type character that doesn't have a lot of history, hasn't been in a lot of books, shows up occasionally here and there, is Japanese. It's very much a Japanese type story. It's sort of mixing manga in, but telling that New Mutants, early X-Men idea of a teenager, feeling outcast, coming to terms with having mutant powers that suddenly develop. There's a Shadow King type character that might be the Shadow King, but maybe not. You don't know what's going on with that. It's really genre bending, and the art is just incredibly beautiful. So the book is being written and drawn by Peach Momoko. I think because this is sort of made for trades, you're going to get a nice 5-issue arc that tells probably the initial story, and after that I'll see where it goes, but I highly recommend it. If you like manga, if you liked early Chris Claremont X-Men, the writing sort of feels like that, and the art is just incredible. The art is really beautiful.
I think that might be the best Ultimate book on the stands right now. I also think that is like literally the worst Ultimate Universe book. I think the production of that book is pitch perfect. That is literally the worst book from what I want out of an Ultimate book, if that makes sense. And I wonder if, Jay, that's why you like it so much as someone who never gave a crap about the Ultimate Universe, if that's why that one's like specifically clicking with you.
Yeah, because
it's a whole different ethos.
It has there's no connection to anything else. She was like, okay, you're going to make me put this book in the Ultimate Universe, fine. But it doesn't deal with any of that. The first 5 issues that we had to read, that's out. No one cares.
Doesn't matter.
It's out the
whatsoever.
Water. It's very much a standalone book that is, just
gorgeous, breathtaking. I love how sparse it is. Like, the words barely take up any space. It just lets the art breathe. It is a treasure to look at. But goddamn, is that like not what I want out of an Ultimate Universe book whatsoever? I want what I'm going to recommend, which is the Ultimate Galactus trilogy, which is written by Warren Ellis and Mark Millar, drawn by Trevor Hairsine, Steve Epting, Steve McNiven, Tom Rainey, John Romita Jr., and Brandon Peterson. This book is so good for most of it. So this book is 3 different miniseries. It is Ultimate Nightmare issues 1 through 5, which is absolutely gorgeous, and most of it is done by Warren Ellis and Trevor Hairsine. Then it is Ultimate Secret 1 through 4, which is, I think, for the most part, if not all of it, Warren Ellis written, and then Steve McNiven art, which is my first exposure to Steve McNiven art before Civil War, and this crap just blew my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And then it was Ultimate Extinction 1 through 5. And I think that is mostly John Romita Jr. and Brandon Peterson. And Brandon Peterson is a revelation in this book, just because like you wanted to see something you'd never seen before. And all due respect to John Romita Jr., who I think transformed the medium, but this was seeing something new. And seeing something new is what the Ultimate Universe was about, especially in the mid-2000s. It was all about transforming your expectations, which I think this book did. I think the story in Ultimate Extinction literally sucks butts. I think it is so bad. I think the finale is awful. However, Ultimate Nightmare and Ultimate Secret are revelatory. They are changes what you think like a miniseries can be. That was like how I felt as I was reading it at the time. It takes what you're expecting for Galactus. Like the entire time in the first series, they sneak into like an old like deregulated like KGB facility and they find what turns out to be Vision, right? Vision is a robot that has been dissected and, reverse engineered. And he's just like, yeah, I landed here 100 years ago. I am the Tunguska event, like the thing that crashed here and caused like a huge cataclysm, a huge like natural disaster. It was always expected to be a meteor. It was explained to be this. And this is my favorite thing about the Ultimate Universe, is how it makes our world make more sense. It takes our history and it changes things. And by using superheroes, it makes phenomena that we cannot wrap our heads around, makes it make sense. The Tunguska event in early 1910s was Ultimate Vision crashing to warn us. He's a herald. He's a herald of Galactus, coming to warn us about the coming of Galactus. And he was held prisoner for 80 years, and then all of a sudden, like, he's telling us, he's like, Galactus is coming. I was telling you Galactus is coming for 90 years. All of a sudden, he is here. Like, he is coming. This is now your problem. Ultimate Secret is them dealing with a conspiracy. Ultimate Extinction is them dealing with the fallout of not listening to all these warnings. It is everything I love. It is paranoid. It is postmodern. It is incredible. I hate the way they did actual Galactus. And that's why I love the metaphor so much of Cataclysm, Last Stand of the Ultimates, about actual, like, 616 universe eating 1610 universe, because it is that much better in execution than Ultimate Universe. Recommend this book wholeheartedly. Please read it.
That sounds like the ultimate promise in a nutshell, where you get something that helps you to see things more clearly. You get something that's original and different, and then when it's time to wrap it up, it sucks fuck.
I'm looking forward to reading Ultimate Galactus. I'm gonna get that and read that. Thank you, George.
It's a good one. I think it reads well on its own.
All right, Chad, you're up next. Do you have another Ultimate book for us?
I don't. Although Ultimate Spider-Man is really fun.
Okay.
It's got Ben, like I said, and it's a Ben Parker, J. Jonah Jameson buddy cop movie, but newsmen instead.
The two of them talking is like Leo talking to Martin Sheen in The West Wing, right? Like, it's just two old dudes just shooting the shit back and forth together, and it just makes me so happy every time they're on panel together. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get Ben imparting wisdom, just a little bit more gruff, but it's like, it was fun to see out of a Hickman book. Mm-hmm. But no, my book is going to be a real book. I know, it's exciting time. So this is a book my brother-in-law recommended that I read 2 or 3 years ago. It's called All of the Marvels, and it's written by a guy named Douglas Wolk. And what he did was he sat down and he read all of the Marvel comic books from the early 1960s, 1961, through Secret Wars. And the book was not what I expected. I'll say that right off the bat. There are a couple of chapters in here where he'll go and follow like a hero and, tell you about all the different things that happened to Spider-Man or all the things that happened to Fantastic Four and how they affected the Marvel Universe and the X-Men and what they meant. And there's a whole bunch on Shang-Chi and Black Panther. I don't know. He goes through just different articles or different periods of the Marvel history. We'll talk about how that ties into the bigger themes of things. But then once you get through the meat of the book and you get to the appendix, he breaks down Marvel into 6 different eras, and how the neat thing about Marvel that makes it unique in the world is that it's all one continuous story. For all the reboots and restarts, and it stands in contrast to the Ultimate Universe, where they continue to reboot, reconfigure things, or maybe not in contrast, because that's all one big, long, convoluted story now too. But the story keeps going. Right, it's the story that started in 1961 that's still going on through the end of Secret Wars, and even that was just a blip on the radar where they wipe everything out and start everything new again. But it's all still that same story. But he breaks it up into 6 different arcs and goes through like what's happening there, like 1961 through 1968. It was all about Americans fighting fears from behind the Iron Curtain, or whereas in the 60s through the 80s, it's all about heroes dealing with temptation and like political upheaval and all this other stuff. In 81 to 89, it's about systematic oppression and God's helplessness at going up against evil. And then 1990s, everybody has their own shadow self. You hit the 2005s, and that's the Civil War era, where the big antagonist is themselves and heroes fighting themselves. But he will tie in the Marvel Universe to these different themes along the way. And like I said, just go through these different books and talk about how they reflect that time period, how they reflect that overall theme in Marvel's history. And it's fascinating stuff.
But I think all this stuff matters, right? Like, it matters that the Marvel Universe was founded really by the Fantastic Four, right? Like, that was the beginning of the Marvel Universe. It matters that the Fantastic Four was Jonathan Hickman's first, like, real exposure to the Marvel Universe, to the audiences, right? And, like, it matters that the maker is Reed Richards is founding like this new universe, right? Like, yeah, I don't think it was an accident that like the Maker is the one that like Hickman tied his like wagon to, right? Like to tell like his mega story. The fact that like it started with like a council of Reeds, and that the Maker was like the one Reed that wasn't part of the council of Reeds. And like if you had found the council of Reeds, would he have been different? Would this have ever happened? Like, probably not, right? Like it probably wouldn't have happened, but like this is the one Reed who didn't have access to it. Like all this stuff matters. So man, going back to the origins for it, good stuff, Chad. What a record.
I know. You talk about Reed Richards, posits that the Marvel Universe not focused on Reed Richards. It's focused on Patsy Walker and Linda Carter, the Night Nurse. Because they predated the Marvel heroes, and they were the humans around which this whole universe has been built. And you can see the universe from their perspective.
Well, the Netflix series did a little bit of that with Night Nurse, where they got Rosario Dawson, to sort of go across all the different series that were running at that time.
Yeah, that's the thread.
That book, by the way, Chad, won an Eisner.
It's fascinating. And if you're a comic book nerd, like there were a lot of things I read in here where I'm like, yeah, I know that. And some of the books that I really loved that he didn't go into, he apologizes. But he does dive into the Spider-Mans. He dives into the Squirrel Girls. I like how this guy thinks.
There you go. Well, it's hard to follow Chad with his grandiose book about all of the Marvel Universe, so I won't. I'll just say go out there and make sure that you're reading Ultimate Spider-Man. It's still one of my favorite books out on the market. Still love that book. Still love the fact that Peter Parker has a beard. Still love the fact that like him and Harry are hanging out. Like I thought that was awesome.
That double date issue was incredible.
Yeah. Like I was just like, oh, I'm glad to see Harry and Peter back. Like I love that. I really do love the fact that like Harry died in the 616, but also it was very bittersweet because they had such a really good friendship. Peter should have a friend. Peter should have his Harry. I think that's they're getting everything right. Let's just say that. Go read Ultimate Spider-Man. I love it. And make sure that you're listening to The Last Comic Shop every single week. We've got awesome episodes still coming up for the rest of this summer, including our Captain America Last Soda Shop Challenge. That's right. You loved our last chicken shop. You loved our last burger shop. We got the last soda shop coming up where we're going to rank 16 of the greatest sodas of all time. We're going to give you a final 4 that you can pick, and that's coming up in just 2 weeks. So make sure that you're rate, reviewing, and subscribing over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
And while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the last comic shop, so we encourage you guys to get out there, do what you got to do to support your shops. This week we were talking about Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Invasion and Ultimate Universe. We also talked in our recommendations about Ultimate X-Men. We talked about the Ultimate Galactus trilogy, Ultimate Spider-Man, and then I'm going to make you go to the real bookstores for all the Marvels. But those recommendations and more most likely are waiting for you at your local comic shop. Check them out today. And then circle back to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where we can find what, J.A.?
Oh, we've got links to our merch store. You can get T-shirts, tote bags, coffee mugs. The summer is here, so we've got our summer special design of The Last Comic Shop. Get that in the beautiful fluorescent tank top and wear it with pride at the beach or your local swimming hole. Do those things still exist? Do people still go to swimming holes?
Swimming holes
have
do.
I dated?
I mean, you can dig a hole anywhere and fill it with water and jump in. It's fine. It's fine. But you know what you can also do? Make sure that you're listening and checking out George's show, Shortbox Summary. George, where can they find your awesome show?
Literally on any podcast service under the sun, just search Shortbox Summary. I have been taking a hiatus. Hopefully by the time you hear this, I will be back on the airwaves, back in your ear holes, back making that sweet, sweet comic book music right where you live. So please, if you are curious even a little bit about mid-2000s comic book movies, mid-2000s comic books, mid-2000s pop culture in general, please check out Shortbox Summary.
Yeah, absolutely. And please come back to The Last Comic Shop next week. Until then, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, J. Scott, and the bombastic George from Shortbox Summary. See, I didn't say wonderful this time. See, J.A. gave me crap before, and I ain't saying it. You know what? Stay safe, stay cool, and remember, yes, they have swimming holes. There's tons of them all over. They're called puddles. You can just go stand in one. Just wait for a rainstorm. Go sit in one.
If you take one thing away from this episode, please take that.
Swimming holes, yes. You have to show up on your bike and have baseball cards in the spokes.
Oh.
In the Ultimate Universe, they're infinite. Just fall in one of those swimming holes, you're not getting back out.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2024 Black Angus production.